you, Mr Speaker. I rise today to join the opposition in noting that we will not be supporting this legislation. And before I go on, what I would like to put on the record is that the fact that the WA Liberal opposition is not supporting this bill does not in any way say that we condone animal cruelty. And the fact that we have a fair-mongering campaign being put out there by the government, by the minister, by its backbenchers is a disgrace to this place and is a disgrace of the government. To put a fear campaign out there to say that all WA Liberal opposition members support animal cruelty, you know is false, you know is misleading, and you know is wrong. And to put a fear out there in amongst the community is the worst type of leadership any government or any individual can have. To lead by fear is a disgrace, and I will not be bullied by anyone on the opposition side, on the government side. You stand there and say that we believe in animal cruelty, yet you can't stand here, you can't sit and listen to my debate that we do not condone animal cruelty anyway, in what shape.
Thank you, members.
This bill, to put on the record, will not stop the puppy farming that this government alleges and will not stop the animal cruelty that is occurring under the current Animal Welfare Act. That is where animal cruelty lies, under the Animal Welfare Act. And if it is the Animal Welfare Act that needs tweaking, needs strengthening to improve that ability to allow local governments, to allow the RSPCA to go in and shut down people being cruel to animals, then that's where we should be focused, not on a pretend bill that you have called puppy farming, and you are called stopping puppy farming and causing a fear campaign. That is weak leadership, and that is going out there and just trying to win political votes by putting a fear out there amongst the community. A little bit like your Medi-Scare campaign that went on a few elections ago. They just put out scare campaigns to scare people into voting for them. Well, I'm telling you now, the majority of Western Australians are smarter than that. They are smarter than that. And every Western Australian, bar a minority of people who are sick, who are cruel to animals, every other West Australian will always protect and stand up for the welfare of animals of any kind. Any kind. So to come in here and spread mistruths is very unfitting of a government. I took time to meet with Dogs West. I took time to meet with a number of constituents, and it actually was raised during the Darling Range campaign 2 years ago yesterday. So it's quite fitting that this bill was debated yesterday and continues on to today, where it was raised with me by a number of people in Darling Range who are dog breeders and animal lovers. Just because you're a dog breeder doesn't make you not an animal lover. In actual fact, all the dog breeders I've met look after their pets better than anyone else. They care for their animal, they care for their welfare. So during the Darling Range by-election, myself and the member for Riverton, who was the leader at the time, went along to one of the consultation programs at Dogs West that was run by the member for Maylands, and I believe the Department of Local Government and Communities was also there. And we listened. There was a huge crowd there, Acting Speaker, a huge crowd, and they weren't happy with the way the government was going down with this legislation. They tried to express those concerns. So the fact that we have members on the government side saying we consulted and we've listened to the public, yes, you've consulted, yes, you've listened, but you haven't acted on all the concerns that have been raised by the people you consulted with, and you certainly haven't acted in the best interest of the main stakeholder, which is Dogs West, and also Welga, which is the WA Local Government Authority. I'll go on to them in a moment, but two main stakeholders, Welga and Dogs West, their concerns completely ignored by this government, completely ignored. So to put on the record, I grew up with dogs. My dad was a breeder of Dobermans and also a breeder of greyhounds. I grew up with dogs and and litters, but also he had kennels of large dogs. So we had a number of dogs that would come and stay with us while people went on their holidays and had nowhere to board their big dogs, their Pyrenees mountain dogs or their German shepherds and the like. So I am a true animal lover, dog lover, and I would hate to see anyone mistreat any animal. What I've learned from all of this, growing up in breeding of dogs, is that the breeders actually put more time and effort and care on knowing where their puppies end up. I've seen my father turn away people buying his puppies because he did not believe that they were going to a safe home, or they did not believe that the type of home they were going to was conducive for a Doberman. They need exercise, they need space. If he did not believe the person wanting to buy that puppy was able to provide the best home possible for that puppy, he would not sell it to them. So to come in here and ignore the breeders who care about their breed, they care about their industry, they care about their animals, I think is a major misstep of this government, and one that I hope that the Minister may lead today in making an amendment to rectify that mistake. And I will be seeking during consideration an amendment to have Dogs West members and registered dogs of Dogs West be exempt from sterilisation and be exempt from the need of going to the local government to get the approval for breeding. And I will touch more on that a little later. What I wanted to do is just start off with the fear-mongering thing just a moment, that we had the Minister for Racing during question time was asked about greyhound muzzling and how this is actually going to improve the welfare of greyhounds. Not one word in his answer answered that question. Not one word. He didn't even touch on that this bill is better for the greyhounds' welfare because the muzzling's been removed. Not once did he actually raise that in his answer, which I'm totally perplexed as why. Does he not believe that it's in the best interest of the greyhound? I don't know, but he did not answer the question. Instead, he chose to go down that further spreading of fear amongst the community, which, as I said, there seems to be no bar low enough for this government to go. But we also saw today the Minister himself, which I have to say, to be seeing media releases come out in the middle of a debate before a vote's given, before consideration is done, and to see a media release come out by the very Minister who has control of this legislation and saying that the WA Liberals are ignoring the overwhelming community support for the state government dog amendment, Stop Puppy Farming Bill, to end puppy farming in WA and ensure responsible pet ownership. Well, that's false. That is actually false. The bill will not stop cruelty to animals. The bill will not stop puppy farming. And Minister, I think if you were outside this chamber, you'd be able to admit that to yourself. It will not stop it because there is nothing in this legislation that is actually going to stop it. We've already had, I'd like to see where we have this overwhelming underground puppy farming industry. Where do we have this overwhelming underground? Where do we have it? I know I've spoken to people that say they get the puppies from New South Wales. They get the puppies from over east. So if we have this overwhelming, growing underground industry of puppy farming, show us. And make it happen in the Act where you can stop it, which is the Animal Welfare Act. It's under the Animal Welfare Act. This legislation is not worth the paper it is written on without the Animal Welfare Act being amended. So if you're unable to shut someone down for cruelty right now, how do you think this piece of paper is going to stop puppy farming? So I would be very interested to hear how the Minister can see that happening. I understand 2 cases were prosecuted in the last 10 years. If there was a reason why there's been other cases not prosecuted, fix up why they have not been prosecuted. Tell us which cases, how many cases have come forward and not been able to be prosecuted because you're unable to do so because of the Animal Welfare Act. Don't just say they're out there with no real proof that we have a growing underground puppy farming market. if the puppy farming, the puppies are coming from farms over in New South Wales, how does this legislation stop that? We have other jurisdictions who have actually said the cruelty of animals will stop this, not putting in a puppy farming legislation. So we are a little lost on why this is meant to be the all and end all, and I can't see that it'll actually be fixing it in any way. We also had the member for Maylands who put out a Facebook post to people that was shared earlier this week, saying big week in Parliament with the animal welfare. 8 years of blood, sweat and tears. Well, you haven't been doing this for 8 years, but 8 years blood, sweat and tears. Anyway, I'm not taking interjections because I don't have a lot of time. I did read.
Point of order, member for Neville.
But I can't hear the member, and I don't think she's taking any interjections. No. And she has only got 30 minutes to speak, and they're deliberately interrupting her to cut her time.
I only had 30 minutes.
Thank you, members. The members indicated that she's not taking interjections, so I will have to call people if they interject.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I appreciate your support. So let's move on to the WELGA, the organisation that will be responsible for implementing all the changes that this legislation, if passed, will put forward. Now, we actually have WELGA who do not support this legislation. So the very body that are going to be responsible for policing the parts of this bill, the very body that will be policing it and upholding it out in the community, do not support it.
Don't you mean the local
They don't support it.
You've got that wrong.
So the WA local government,
The local government,
the WA local government, do not have.
Member for Neville.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I think the Minister can actually respond to any questions he has or concerns when he delivers his secondary speech.
Member for Southern River.
She needs to know that.
Don't be stupid.
Member for Southern River. Member for Southern River, I'm calling you for the first time.
Thank you very much, Acting Speaker. I know who WELGA is, I know who local government are, but when you have the peak body of your local government authorities disagreeing with this legislation, who represent all the other local governments, and the fact that you don't think that that's a problem just actually shows how little you all know. If you do not have the support of the WA local government organisation authority, you do not have the support of local government. So how can you go in breach of your own agreements with the local government to give them warning? So I'll read out, and I believe the member for Moore raised this last night. And yes, I was not here last night, but I did read Hansard, uncorrected Hansard, and read everyone's second reading speech. And I have to say, member for Southern River, your constituents aren't happy with you. I've already had phone calls into my office. And we won't talk about other members who had hair in their food, but anyway. We'll go to the executive summary of a stop puppy farming legislation by WELGA that was done in March 2020. And they've called a special meeting, and the executive summary had no opportunity was provided under the state and local government partnership agreement for sector consultation prior to the bill's introduction to Parliament. The Secretariat comment: there are some understandable and arguable foreseeable concerns with some aspects of the Dog Amendment Stop Puppy Farming Bill 2020 from the perspective of the local government sector. The bill was introduced to Parliament prior to consultation with the local government sector under the state and local government partnership agreement, where a 12-week consultation period is considered appropriate if new legislation or amendments is existing. Legislation are likely to have a significant impact on the sector. I won't read it all out because I believe the member for Moore went through the actual discussion, but I will read out the motion that was passed, moved and passed, carried, and that was that WELGA write to the Minister and request that he withdraw the Stop Puppy Farming Bill and, more appropriately, consult with the sector, traditional custodians and the wider community, or failing that he remove any reference to local government in the bill, as the sector does not endorse it in the current form. So the local government authority sector do not endorse this bill, yet they are the ones that are going to have to be responsible in delivering it. Now, at a time that we're in COVID-19 and we're asking local government right now to dig deep and support the community who are in crisis. We're asking the local government to freeze their rates. We're asking the local government not to increase their rates. We're asking the local government to look after any tenants in their property. We're asking the local government to remove any sporting fees and charges and community sporting fees and charges. They're already taking a massive hit in a reduced income and having to foot the bill in promoting and supporting small business in their regions. And here we have a government in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis putting another impost on our local government. It is going to take manpower, it is going to take resources, and it is going to take money to set this all up. And yet, the local government minister didn't even consult under his own agreement with the local government authority and make sure that they were supportive of this. And you know what, even if he had, they're not supportive of this and you're just ignoring them. Totally ignoring the sector that needs to deliver on it. It's actually shameful, and I don't know how you think it's going to work. The fact is, every local government authority can make their own planning rules and say, we're just not going to allow breeding in our area. And if they say we're not going to allow breeding, what happens to all those dog owners that are currently living in their local district that cannot no longer keep their dog? What does the minister say about that? To me, that is animal cruelty. That is cruel to the families, the children, the lovers of this animal, that all of a sudden they've been able to operate and their local authority says, you know what, we're not allowed in breeding. Now, they may not be breeding, but under this legislation, if they don't de-sex their dog, they have to become a breeder registered under the local government authority. Now, if the local government authority says no breeding, what happens to that dog? What happens to that dog? Does the minister here expect them to give up their dog? Does the minister expect them to pick up their home and move to another area where they may be allowed to have a breeding approval? Right now, in the Cedar-Darling range, I have hundreds of dog lovers and hundreds of dog breeders and hundreds of members of the Dogs West Association who are scared that they will no longer be able to keep their dog on their property as a whole, because many of them enjoy showing. It's a great hobby. The dogs love it. The families and the people, the dog owners love it. And you're going to say to them, sorry, if your shire says no breeding, you must either get rid of your dog or move home. Well, guess what? May I seek an extension?
Extension granted.
Well, guess what? The people of Darling Range are already in a cost of living crisis now. Most of them, their homes, they've got a debt higher than what they can sell it for. So what are they going to do? They can't just pick up and move home. They love their animal, they love their hobby, and you're forcing them to make a decision. Neuter your dog or get rid of your dog or move home. That is cruelty. That is not fair to the animal. That is not fair to the families and the owners and the breeders. So I'll move on to Dog West. Dogs West engaged with the government thinking they were going to get a good hearing, wanted to make this legislation as positive as possible. And I just want to thank all the people out at Dogs West, in particular the President Pam Campbell, the Vice President Des Keogh and the CEO Anne Rushby. They have been great supporters of trying to make sure members of Parliament on all sides of politics understood their argument. That's all they were asking, is that everyone could understand where they were coming from. Their code of ethics and rules and regulations are second to none. And I believe if the government picks up their code of ethics, rules and regulations and puts it in the Animal Welfare Act, we wouldn't actually need this bill, because that would actually stop breeding being misused, it will stop dogs being abused, and it will actually weed out those who aren't doing the right thing. But the government's decided not to listen to Dogs West, who are experts in this field and have good long-standing practice and are highly regarded. Their biggest issue, of course, is the desexing. Their whole being is making sure they have a good pure breed, that they can actually protect the line, that they can actually develop and get a good, strong bloodline of any breed that they're actually working with. They don't want to see the dilution of this, and they also don't want to see the cruelty to animals. These people actually have all the answers this government needs to actually cut down and get rid of inappropriate breeders in our society. No one is going to support people mistreating dogs. And that's why you get quite emotional when our words are twisted and falsehoods are put out there. We all love our dogs. We all love our animals, whether they're cats, dogs, birds, rabbits. We do not want to see harm to these. Neither does Dogs West. And I'm asking that the Minister actually really considers exempting Dogs West out of having to de-sex their dog, and also exempting them out of having to go to the local government authority to be a breeder. And I'll put that up in the consideration of detail. But I do hope the local government minister will look at this favourably, putting all other things aside and not worrying about political point scoring, but doing the right thing. Doing the right thing by the hundreds and thousands of Dogs West owners and dogs that are out there. We need to actually make sure that these dogs are protected in the long run, and the best way to do that is to make sure that the people who know the best way to breed and can teach the breeders.
Point of order, member for Netherlands.
Thank you, Acting
I
Speaker. Can't hear the speaker.
We're going very well. If you want to stay and listen, that's very good. Interjections, as I said before, I'll have to call you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I did note when the government members were speaking last night and making, some silly comments, our side stayed quiet. They actually stayed quiet. They allowed respect. They showed respect. What we don't get from this government is respect.
Speakers on to speak. Member for Belmont, I'm calling you for the first time. Thank you.
All this government keeps showing, Mr Speaker, is their lack of respect for debate, their lack of respect for honesty, and their lack of respect for their role as government. And as I said, leadership by fear is the worst type of leadership, and unfortunately that's what this state is under. Noting the time, I did want to just quickly touch on some of the emails I did get in. But before I do, my biggest concern, and so the same as with Dog West, is our local government authorities. There's 138 of them. Minister, if you can explain how we're going to make this consistent. How is the consistency going to go across when each local government has the right to just change their own planning rules and actually just block out breeding totally? That's one of the biggest concerns I think the local government authority has, but also the owners of dogs and also Dogs West. I've been told that there's a couple of shires where Dog West members have already contacted them and their local authority has already told them that they'll be banning breeding because it's just going to be too hard to manage, and I'd hate to see that actually happen. So I got quite a few emails, to be honest, all in support of including Dogs West into the legislation, all in support of exempting them from having to be sterilised. And I haven't got time to read them all in here, but I would like to just make a few comments, because the one reoccurring thing that came out of all of them is their disappointment. And I'll read this line. This one came from a Doberman breeder, and her disappointment was, we're extremely disappointed that we've not been recognised in the bill after being told by Lisa Baker, MLA, that we are the gold standard and would not be affected by the bill. That has been repeated just about in every piece of correspondence or conversation I've had with dog breeders, that when they were at the consultation with the member from Maylands, that she stood up there and told them that they were gold standard. Well, if they're gold standard, why have they been excluded from this legislation? If they are so good at what they do and the government recognises that, why were they not recognised in this piece of legislation? And I believe that went to all members of Parliament. It wasn't just to myself, that one. It went to every single member of Parliament, so all members should be well aware of that one. I've also had emails across Kelmscott, from Oakford, from Keysbrook, from Serpentine, from Darling Downs, also from Roleystone and Bedfordale, and I think I said Oakford as well, and Rolly Stone. So the problem is, the biggest issue that they're all raising is their fear of their local government shutting them down. But they've got here one of the things. I'm a member of Dogs West and have actually participated in confirmation showing and dog barks with my dog. I actively show every weekend at the Canine Grounds in Southern River, and I also support the country dog shows in Geraldton and Albany. I own and breed Bernese mountain dogs, which are a large breed of dog and are quite rare still in Australia. Mr McGowan quoted that currently dog breeding is totally unregulated and there are not many minimum standards for keeping a dog. Well, I beg to differ, as I am a registered breeder who is a member of the ANKC, which is the Australian New Zealand Kennel Club, and is Kennel Club, and its affiliation in the West being Dogs West. I had a pass of breeding examination before I had to even become a registered breeder. I agree that I am bound in accordance with the Dog West regulation and code of ethics. So when we say that there's no regulation around breeding, there is a massive code of ethics, rules and regulations under the Dog West Breeding Act, under the Dog West Breeding Code. And this is why we need to be making sure we include them. And I did note an interjection last night was that the Dogs West would not take on registration. Will you just shush and stop harping? Seriously. Seriously. You members are disgraceful. Just shush.
Thank you, members. I see the member has 5 minutes left. I'd appreciate it if we could hear her out in silence. Thank you.
So the problem is this government just doesn't listen. They get out there and say, we door knocked and we know our constituency. We know that our constituency do not want this legislation, yet they're ignoring. They've got rose-coloured glasses on, they've got blinkers on, and they're only listening to their own little collective. They're not listening to the other people out there. To actually, the member for Southern River, honestly, you are in big trouble, mate, because your electorate, when you got up there and told the same story that you've been telling for a couple of months now about a breeder that didn't look after the animal well, why wasn't the RSPCA called? Why haven't you acted on them? You keep getting up and start talking about the same one story. Do you not have any more stories other than that one little story you keep grasping at and do not fix? Stand up and fix the issue. Fix the issue and it will not be a problem anymore. Shut them down now. And this legislation will not fix it. It is the Animal Welfare Act that will fix it, not this. I don't know how thick everyone is on the other side, but they do not understand. They do not understand. You find thick offensive, yet you tell us that we believe in animal cruelty. Please, animal cruelty is the lowest of low. The lowest of low. And you guys just find that bar every time and go to rock bottom. So, in closing, Acting Speaker, we support stopping animal cruelty, bringing the right legislation that will enable that to happen, and we will support you 100 miles an hour. We will support you. Minister, try to be a minister for once. Try to be a minister for once and be responsible.
You're absolutely... You do nothing.
Minister, I will have to call you if you keep it.
Chuck him out.
It's not within my powers to chuck him out.
I can't hear the speaker.
We've got 3 minutes to go. Please, can we just hear the member for Darling Range out? Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. In summary, this legislation will not put a stop to cruelty. You all know it comes under the Animal Welfare Act. Fix that. This will not put a stop to puppy mills from over east. They will still be coming in. And when you actually stop the number of breeders by the proper breeders, you will actually create more demand. There will be less supply and there will be more demand. And when there's less supply and more demand, it goes underground. So if you want to force it underground and make it harder to get, that's what you'll be doing with this legislation. Include the Dogs West in the exemptions. Allow them to help you make this bill work. Allow them to help you stamp out anybody who is doing it wrong. COVID-19, right now, everyone is struggling in WA. And we're standing here talking about a piece of legislation that will not actually fix anything that the title is saying. Stop leading by fear. stand up for what is real in this electorate and in this state, and that right now is if someone is acting cruel to an animal, stop them. If COVID-19, the issue is cost of living and unemployment, stop putting more burden onto our local government who are trying hard to keep up with the struggles right now. Stop putting more burden on them and listen to them as they have told you they do not support this. Stop ignoring your main stakeholders. For a government that has been in for only 3 years, the arrogance that is coming out from this government is second to none. Second to none. They have come in here and they believe their own rubbish. They spin their own rubbish, and they'll do whatever it takes to do political point scoring instead of doing what's right by the community. As a government and as a minister, you have sworn an oath to do right by the community of Western Australia. It's about time that you all actually started doing your job and started leading this state the way the state actually deserves.